podcast. I'm Will van der Hart. It's brilliant to have you here, and we're delighted today to be live from Nottingham, where we've been gathering together over 800 leaders from across the network to explore how we can be envisioned and empowered and equipped to serve the Lord in new ways as leaders. And we have got a great crowd in the room. Amazing, yeah, what a privilege. And we're absolutely delighted today to invite my good friend, Jonny Hughes, to come and join us. Jonny, welcome, it's great to have you. Come and take a seat. Jonny, have a sit down. Now, Jonny, this has not been a big trip for you. Just tell us.
No, I'm actually cycling home afterwards.
Cycling home. So just tell us what that looks like. You've got a church here in Nottingham.
Yeah, so my wife Amy and I have pastored a church, Trinity Church Nottingham, since 2016 when we came planted from HDB. And we've got a busy home life too. We've got 5 kids. And we've been busy this last decade doing those 2 things principally.
That is a lot. We've known each other for a long time, more than 20 years.
Yeah, we met in London, didn't we? You were, I think, a curate or...
Yeah, I was a curate in
similar.
Marylebone,
yeah.
And I think you were a single young man who'd just come back from travelling or something at the time.
Well, I was a mess, actually, I think is probably the best description.
I was trying to be polite to the
of what I was at that point.
It's code, a single young man who's come back from travelling. I think we all know what that means.
Say no more.
You're travelling for a distant country, and you met Amy, who'd also come back from travelling in our church.
Yeah, we did. In fact, I met her on the steps of the church. But although that's not strictly true, to give a bit more context, our families, wider families, grew up around each other. So there was some knowledge there. But that was, of course, that was when we really got to know each other, and married and all that stuff happened.
Yeah. Amazing. And Jonny, we've talked a lot over the years, but you've been someone who I've always really enjoyed talking to, because you're kind of what I'd call a disruptor. That's not impolite.
That's true.
Yeah, you just have that, like you have the ability to see the tangent, which I don't often see. And so it's always been really stimulating. And I thought it'd be great to get you on the podcast a bit. But the first thing, I guess I want to start with the idea of expectations, because you're a cool guy. You've even got a cool moustache, which I'm quite jealous of, because I seem to have quite patchy beard options going on. My wife tells me not even to try. You've always had that kind of edge to you and been engaging in contemporary things. You came into church, I remember, like super cool guy, and then you went into ministry. It's all been quite unexpected, though, in a way. You know, there's a sort of, if I was in a worldly well, I'd say your trajectory and then what you've ended up doing, it's always been sort of surprising maybe to you.
Yeah. Have I let you down?
No, not at all. I think you really inspired me, but I think it's like the journey you've taken has, it feels like it's been filled with surprise.
I think it has, yeah. So my father, looking at it from the outside, you might say it's quite predictable. So my father's a vicar. My dad has an identical twin. He has 3 sons, 2 of whom are vicars. So I suppose in some sense it's the family business, but I kind of resonate with the Apostle Paul in Acts. When he encounters the Lord, God says to him, why do you kick against the goads? Like, why are you constantly resisting? And I felt that in my teens very, very keenly. And I would say it grew to a point probably just before I met you, but really not very long before, where I would say I had very significant antipathy, almost hatred toward the church. And many years later, I feel like there's that line from Romeo and Juliet where I think it's Juliet who says, how can my only love have sprung from my only hate? Mm. And I suppose that ambivalence has always been at the core of my personality, core of my experiences. So calling to ministry, which is obviously where my life has taken me, is both very predictable, looking at one particular narrative, and also quite surprising. And I remember a couple of years ago now, not many, 2 I think, hearing Jill Weber from 24/7 Prayer speak, and she said this line, which I won't forget. She said, "God always takes you to your never, never land." And so when I look back, I remember the vow I made as a 15-year-old, which was, I will never do what my father's done. And the last 27 or so years have basically been God making me renege and repent that vow. And it's actually getting me to a place where I've wanted to beg him to give me what I said I'd never want. So that's been an extraordinary journey. It has been very surprising for me.
That's amazing. I mean, that's like, I feel like that's so powerful. That you described to me that verse, your sort of verse is from John 21, where Jesus says, you can see where you're going now, basically, but in the future, you're going to be led where you don't want to go.
Yeah, it's John 21. I mean, so the story there is that I'd come back from a weekend of preaching at a big church in America, and I didn't do that a lot. It makes it sound like that, that didn't happen a lot, but it happened this particular weekend, and I thought I was it. I was ready to, I don't know, be the next Christian celebrity or something. And I got back to London where I was working at the time, and I was going on the selection thing for the church. And the whole thing felt like a major climb down. Honestly, and I was on this train on my own, and I played Bible roulette, which you're not supposed to do, are you? But I just opened the Bible at random, and John 21 came open, and of course it's that encounter where Jesus reinstates Peter, and I really resonate with Peter, because he's a disruptor.
Yeah.
He was rebellious in lots of ways, and at times did abandon Jesus clearly, and that's why he's been reinstated, and Jesus encounters him. And Peter's life is also described by competition and comparison. And that's been a big part of my story too. And Jesus looks at him and says, when you were young, so, feed my sheep, care for my lambs, all that stuff. When you were younger, you got up and dressed yourself and went where you wanted to go. But when you're older, somebody else will take you by the hand and lead you where you do not wish to go. He said this to indicate the kind of death by which he would glorify God. And I think some of my journey's been about I came with the expectation, you started with that, it's a great word, that my journey would be about, I suppose, my expectations being fulfilled, and I would glorify God through the good stuff, my successes, and actually it's been the surprises, it's been actually the losses, in some ways the defeats that I think God has been using to change my perspective and to position me actually in completely different areas. So that's looked like planting a Church of England church. It's looked like having loads of kids. It's looked like adoption. It's looked like all these things that I never had in my plan.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, as an Anglican priest of 23 years, like that word is so powerful for me personally. Just that feeling of like sometimes just the deflation, and I think sometimes maybe for people in our audience today, there's sort of people on the stage, people in the limelight can think, oh, you don't feel that, you don't know what it feels like. But that feeling, there's a feeling of deflation. It's actually really hard. People probably connect with that feeling like this is surprising or this feels diminishing at times. And that rest in that space of existing where God wants you to be versus that personal ambition, that's such a hard place. We gathered together. It feels like a kind of juxtaposition to a really high moment. Like this morning, yesterday, we were like worshiping to the heavens. It felt like a taste of heaven, and it's so like electric. I'm like, this is incredible. Like I'm like holding my breath. But then I know for many of our leaders, going back to really tough contexts where it won't feel like that. It won't feel like that on Sunday. It won't feel like that in the week. What keeps fueling the fire for you?
Well, first of all, I think recognizing the duality of human and Christian existence in that respect is really helpful. So the Bible has the metaphor of the mountain all the way through the Bible. Actually, the Bible begins in a mountain, and then there's Moses encounters God at a mountain. That's where he leads the people back of the promised land. There's loads of stuff about mountains, isn't there? And that's the kind of place of encounter. The mountain is beyond just the hills. It's the place where we're in rarefied air. We're beyond human tolerance. That's where God encounters us, but there's also the valley. And of course, Elijah has his moment, Mount Carmel, doesn't he, where he does this mountaintop stuff, and immediately thereafter, he's there in the valley. And that's the human condition. So if we are experiencing those two things side by side, we're human. That's why. And we're Christians. Being a Christian doesn't protect us from our fundamentally human condition.
Yeah.
So firstly, I do recognize that. What helps me keep going? Friendship is big. I've always wanted to change the world with my friends. That's a phrase I happened upon in my early 20s. And I think I've learned that whether or not I'm changing the world, probably the sphere of influence God has given me to change is much smaller than I envisaged. But actually, the joy in going deep in that space is much greater than I'd imagined.
Oh, yeah.
And friendships are part of that for me. Being important to somebody is great.
Yeah.
It's so good to be important to somebody. Yeah. And we can't be important. This is the kind of problem with social media is we think we can be important to lots of people. We can't.
Yeah.
So just be important to one person or to somebody. And so friendship's key. For me, another thing is play. There's a Pentecostal theologian whose name I don't know. So, but he did say this because somebody told me he said it.
Go on.
He said, grace is the negation of works, but its style of negation is play.
Nice.
So grace is the negation, the pushing back, the opposite of works, but its style of negation. In other words, how grace operates in our lives is play. It's playful. And for me, that looks like golf. So about a mile down the road from here, the golf course is always calling me. And it's calling me particularly now because I'm about a mile away. So yeah, that's play. That's a place where and that's actually kept me going. And I've only discovered that in the last few years. But play, friendship, those would be two things. Prayer, obviously. Yeah. I should say that, but it is true.
Yeah. Oh, that's so helpful. I was just describing with a friend, actually, Justin, who we're going to speak to later on, that in my experience, that responsibility is joy for breakfast. Yeah. And that the more responsibility you have, the less joy you experience, the less play you encounter. I did some work down at PwC with their head of well-being, and they have 300,000 employees. I said to her, what's the primary indicator of burnout amongst your staff here in this management consultancy firm? She said it's ad hedoni, 100%. That's the Latin word which is used in the diagnostic and statistical manual of the loss of joy. Hedonism is the root from the Latin hedoni, which means ad hedoni, the loss of joy. So she said all of my employees have the presence of mind and the professionalism to turn up at work and look great, and to do their job really well, even when they're absolutely desperate, burned out. But the only thing that they cannot fake is the fact that they have a lack of joy. And if there's one thing that I feel like in looking after the network that I notice is not the earnestness or the application or the functionality or even the spirituality of our leaders, it's often just the loss of joy. Yeah. And there's a lack of play in our environment, which means that friendship is a key loss. That actually, if we ask leaders, both male and female, but I'd say particularly male leaders, how many friends they've got, they'll be like, I don't know, got some friends from school, or like, we have a gathering once a year for my old uni mates. I'm like, how many friends have you got? And they're like, they can't really talk into that. How do you keep those friendships alive apart from on the golf course? Well,
I mean, curiously, that is not the main way, but that's the main way I've found friends outside the church. Okay. Somebody said to me recently, you have to pay. When you're in the church, this isn't true for everybody here or listening to this podcast, is it? But for me, I'm a very churchy person now, so I have to pay to do that. So golf is part of it. I pick up the phone a lot. We do things as family, so it's not just because I'm terrified by intimacy as well, just like. Well, I don't know, is everybody?
Yeah.
Are we all? Oh, good.
I think so.
Good, as long as as long as it's not just me. But it is frightening. But what's helped me in many respects is doing that not just on my own. So Amy and I have got friends who are family friends. That's a nice thing. Yeah. And then there are other environments where it's a couple of guys and it's a coffee or for me, I just, friendship works really well when I'm walking. Yeah. Or doing things like running together, or golf, of course, we've mentioned 4 or 5 times.
Golf. I think anyone working in the golf industry, if you could bless Jonny, that'd be really helpful. Yeah. Good. I think you're pointing to something which is the side by side, and I feel exactly the same way, that actually friendship. But again, I don't want to make this gender-based, but I feel with men particularly, friendship's often built side by side in a like shared activity, fishing together, walking together, playing a sport together, and almost like you tiptoe into the room of intimacy by being, "You're all right? Yeah, I'm right. Yeah, right. Yeah, look, oh, that's a good shot. Oh, good job." And then you kind of get closer and closer that way. But again, something that we want to like encourage, that good leadership is, good leadership flows out of good friendship, and it's a team sport.
Yeah, and intimacy comes through self-disclosure. So you can't take the risk out of that moment of self-disclosure. Without that, there isn't friendship because there isn't intimacy. But when you do have intimacy in whatever sphere you're working in, again, for me, that's the church. So one of our closest family friends is our Emerging Generations pastor and her husband, who's our worship pastor. And that can only, the fact that they're our best friends, certainly our best friends in Nottingham, can only augment, surely, the quality of the ministry we do together. Now, it makes it more complex because there are conversations we have to have where I'm actually the boss, and that's a different thing. And they are so mature, even though they're older than me, and they're so humble to be able to sit in that space as well. But I think that the complexity of friendship ought not to mean we don't attempt it in and around work environments.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think we have, maybe in our network, lived under the adage that you can't have friends in your church. Yeah. And actually, that might have worked for previous generations, but I don't personally believe that works for our generation and beyond, that actually the relationships, the quality of the relationships we have also denote the quality of the ministry that we lead. And that it speaks into accountability too, that where we've seen senior leaders across the globe fall very spectacularly, it often, I can't, obviously this is anecdotal, but I'd presume that they have got very few intimate friendships because no one was there saying, hey, what's going on with you? Like, what's happening with you? Like, what's happened? Why are you making these decisions? And there's no one there to intervene early to say, I see that you're not okay.
Yeah, I mean, AA say, don't the Alcoholics Anonymous say, not the car recovery organization. They may say this, but it's the Alcoholics Anonymous I'm thinking of. When you isolate, you're sick. So, I mean, that's true in nature, isn't it? You know, the wildebeest, gosh, that's the first thing that came to my mind. Impala, I don't know.
Yeah, they wander from the herd when they're unwell.
Right, and that is the moment before they're about to be taken out. Yeah. So that's not how to think. I mean, would you trust a leader that has no friends or some friends? I mean,
yeah, of course. We said we'd say something, we've just got a few minutes left, but say something about next generation, because you do have a remarkable sort of prophetic edge. Maybe it's like an insight, again, that disruptive spirit of saying, this is where I see. We want to say a little bit of what you see future leader generations in the church needing to thrive in this very uncertain world.
Yeah, you kind of gave me a little nod that you might ask me this question, and I've been terrified of what the answer might be, because I don't have necessarily clearly well-developed thoughts, but I do think some of it comes, if I was going to think about the character of the leaders at Trinity, which is the church I lead, that we're trying to build. We're trying to build people who are confident in the gospel. You know, Christ is in us, the hope of glory. That is not a kind of a waver. There's no wavering in that statement. That is, and by the way, that statement is entirely exclusive. It is not sort of like, well, I think this might be true and other options are available. This is like Christ in you, the hope of glory. So there's a confidence, Jesus says in the kingdom of heaven advances forcefully, and forceful people take hold of it, passionate people. But passionate comes from the Latin passio, which means to suffer. So I think there's a sense in which our confidence has to do with having clarity around the convictions we have and being willing. You know you have a conviction when you are willing to suffer for it.
Yeah.
Willing to suffer, and Jesus says we will, willing to suffer the fact that you will be overlooked, you will be placed in obscurity, you'll be made to wait, you'll have pain, you'll be rejected, and you won't be perceived to be with the cool crew. I think one of the fundamental problems that the church has, particularly the Church of England in this nation, is its connection to power. And the fact that it's been infusing that mainlining power for so long. I'm thinking of institutional power particularly. And it's lost, therefore, its prophetic contribution to the culture. It no longer has something distinctive to say. Yeah. And, as somebody said, when you marry the spirit of the age, you'll be a widow in the next. And I think so the future generation of leaders have to be prophetic by their holiness, by their distinctiveness, by the fact they're not singing from the same hymn sheet, that, who knows, some political party or whoever, the golf club, to go back to golf. Or some other group of people is saying, we've got to come, Isaiah 2, I think it's verse 11. Do not fear man, in whose nostrils is breath, for of what account is he?
Wow.
So a fearless church in a fearful generation where anxiety and despair and depression. So a fearless church in a fearful world. A hopeful church in a generation that's really known for its despair, for cynicism, for hard and cold-heartedness. A big-hearted and hopeful church. Abraham, Romans 4 is it? Against all hope, Abraham, in hope, believed. And so God made him the father of many nations. I think that's some of what God wants to do in the church, and it comes back to the gospel.
It's incredible. Jonny, that's just so, I feel like so moved by that. Such a blessing. Thank you for just sharing your heart. I just feel the Lord just really speak to us through that little prophetic word there at the end, and everything you shared. So powerful, but that's felt like a really timely and like really godly word for us all. And I just believe that we are a fearless church in a fearful generation. That's going to transform people's experience of the Lord in these coming years as well, that we are a safe haven, we are a place of refuge for the world. Bless you, Jonny. Thank you for being here. Let's give Jonny Hughes a massive round of applause. Jonny, thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for being with us on this special live episode of the Good Leader podcast with my guest, Jonny Hughes, and we look forward to seeing you next time. God bless.